Thank you very much, NCTS Mediacom, for such a wonderful video. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sheila Napalang. I'm from the Philippines, and I will be moderating this afternoon session. Thank you for attending the Women in Transportation Leadership webinar Series 3, where we will talk about invisible women, mobility and active transport during COVID-19 pandemic. Joining me this afternoon are amazing ladies who will be covering a multitude of topics. But before we move forward, let me just share with you webinar etiquettes. All right, so all right, so all right. Of course, this is like anything, even if it's face-to-face or virtual, please show respect and proper decorum throughout the entire webinar. We ask you that if you're not speaking, to please mute your microphone so that others may not be distracted. You may send your Q&A, you may send your questions in the Q&A panel during and after the presentation in time for the Q&A portion. Now, please note that the webinar will be recorded. Now, this is important. E-certificates will be issued for each webinar session that you will be attending. However, this is incumbent upon you making sure that you submit your evaluation form, which we will flash later on. Also important for us to remember that copies of the presentation may be requested from the presenters only. So if that's clear to everybody, may I just ask everyone to please just give us just to have like a minute of silence to remember those who have gone before us and those who are suffering from COVID-19, and also in gratitude for our lives. So please just take a moment for us to remember. So once again, good afternoon, everybody. You know, today is also a celebration of women as well as a celebration of life. To start off, we would like to thank all our you see all the, I'm not going to go through the logo, we don't have enough time, but this is in collaboration, the Women in Transport Leadership in collaboration with the EASTS, the Transportation Science Society, National Center for Transportation Studies, and all the different universities that we belong to. To open our first day of webinar is the President of the Transportation Science Society of the Philippines, as well as the Director of the National Center for Transportation Studies, a distinguished professional, my former boss, and a person I respect and salute to, even if he's no longer my boss. Please help me welcome Dr. Ricardo Sigua.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc Sheila, and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this seminar on a very interesting topic. And actually, this is a part of our ongoing series as we continue to provide and disseminate relevant information regarding various topics in transportation, especially during the time of the pandemic. The Women in Transport Leadership, or WiTL, in collaboration with the National Center for Transportation Studies, the TSSP, and the Eastern Asia Society for Transportation Studies, is convening this two-part Asian-wide webinar series. So this means today and tomorrow we'll be having this very interesting webinar. No? And this webinar will feature a number of scholars who have undertaken very important initiatives as far as gender and transport are concerned. At first, I was a bit hesitant to give the welcome or opening remarks, as I feel a bit, yes, uneasy to be in an almost all women seminar of this kind. But being in the presence of our longtime friends and colleagues, such as Dr. Dapalang, Dr. Guillen, Dr. Sorupia, Dr. Abuso, um, Dr. Mateo Babiano, and of course, Professor Dazel Rivera, that would be more than enough. It's a big reason for me to be around, and for our other, say, colleagues in the university, not to be around, because this is just a rare opportunity to meet our longtime friends. Of course, we are also very privileged to have a line of speakers coming from uh, various countries, such as Thailand, India, Vietnam, where else? Japan. Okay, if I take a look at, and I hope and of course Malaysia. No? So I'd like to encourage, rather, thank our speakers from University of Technology Mara, Malaysia, Dr. Masria Binti Mustafa, Dr. Pawini Yamtrakul from Thailand. We also have Dr. Rewa Marathe from University of Melbourne, Australia, although she's coming from India. Dr. Trin Tuan from University of Economics of Ho Chi Minh City of Vietnam. And yes, Professor Seiji Shibata from Sagami Women's University. So personally, I like to welcome you all, although still a virtual meeting, but I hope I could feel that you're also say a guest here in the Philippines, but of course there will be opportunity for us to meet once this pandemic is over. So we have really a big line of speakers, and they'll be talking about a very important but sometimes forgotten topic in transportation, and that is regarding gender bias in whatever we do, usually in planning, design of our transportation facilities, which we know would greatly affect women's health and well-being. Um, yes, during our discussion, our female leaders acknowledge that they cannot do this alone, and they would definitely need. They call us gender champion uh, partners, and this would be a step, one step. This webinar um, would serve as a one step in understanding and creating awareness with regard to the need of women in transport. Much has been done, and as far as gender is concerned, I think there is already equality in almost all aspects, but sometimes um, in fields such as this, like transportation, um, it's being dominated by, well, sad to say, the males. However, let's this would be a good chance, no, for us to hear what they have to tell us, and hopefully this could be a beginning or a start of maybe a paradigm shift in planning and design of our transportation facilities. So, well, we look forward to a very fruitful presentation of research materials, as well as fruitful discussion on the topic. So again, I'd like to welcome you all, especially, well, the participants. I don't know exactly the percentage of male and female, but that would be determined soon, because this is not, after all for women. So uh, thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sigwa. And thank you also for overcoming your initial hesitation to partner with us, because we do need your gender champions like you do. Like you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining us this afternoon. Um, just as a background, if you might have noticed, our we have a very interesting title. It's called Invisible Women, and because there's a book actually it has a title that way, and it's very interesting. And maybe our leader, who will be talking tomorrow, will be expounded at that on this a little bit more. So anyway, to contextualize our webinar series, I'd like to call on one of the core members of the Women in Transport Leadership, Dr. Danielle Gillian. She's a sustainable transport, climate change, and social development consultant, researcher, as well as professorial lecturer from the School of Urban and Regional Planning and Asian Institute of Tourism, both of the University of the Philippines, and a lecturer from the Ateneo de Manila University. She has been an advocate of inclusive mobility since her graduate studies from UP SERP and the University of Tsukuba, Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Gillian.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sheila. Yes, this is Daniel, and thank you for a very nice introduction. And it's my pleasure and honor to actually contextualize and introduce first why we're having this Invisible Women Mobility and Active Transportation during COVID era webinar. Just to start, I think I have to start with showing you how did this all started, did start, no? So this would be, it's about the women in transport leadership, and of course setting the gender and transportation context. You might wonder, who are these women in transport leadership and how come we had this network? This actually started as a very informal kind of network. We're a group of academics. We always meet during conferences, and we always discuss always similar issues about what we're encountering, no, with regard to transportation, no, and the research in particular. So we were very fortunate that our lead, Dr. Edelina Babiano from University of Melbourne, was able to get funding from the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And so with that, she was able to have we were able to create the first knowledge network, which is solely dedicated to empowering women in developing a critical mass of female transport leaders. So the goal is actually to provide a stronger representation of women and women advocates with regard to transportation, because we've realized that for some reason most of the developments are very, how do we say it, maybe not very female friendly, no, for the experience, and that we want to broaden the awareness of the issues and challenges that everyone is undertaking. Most of us actually came from or studied from developed countries, and we all experienced the same thing, that we're the only female in the group. So it has been like a tradition or normal. I think it became normal to us. And we are fortunate that I think we have advisors where we can call our gender champions, no, who encourage us. And maybe that's why we're here. And so you can see during the first workshop held in Manila, and we were thankful for the UP National Center for Transportation Studies that they allow us to hold this first Women in Transport workshop international one, and we actually even had a bike tour in Metro Manila. So we organized one to also encourage our friends from Malaysia and from Thailand, from Vietnam. So as you can see in the photos. And then we also established the International Research Group, the Gender and Transport in Asia and the Pacific. So we had a session on the Eastern Asia Society for Transportation Studies. We even formed the Early Career Researchers Forum. And of course, again, we organized the cycling tour in Ho Chi Minh. Interestingly, most of this kind of cycling tours, walking tours, I'm happy to note that it's the women are actually leading and really sharing. And I remember Doc Sheila Napalang had a very interesting experience cycling in the streets of Vietnam. So it's not just in Metro Manila, but even in Ho Chi Minh. And at the end, you know, we have the usual discussion. Oh, we are experiencing the same issues. No, it's not just, you know, typical of the Metro Manila or any other urban areas in the Philippines or in Vietnam or in Malaysia. And then the pandemic hit us, and we actually had this discussion and we were fortunate that Dr. Masria of the University of Malaysia uh, had the first webinar, no, I think our very first webinar on COVID-19 and women's issues. So we actually had this before, more on the discussion, a very free-flowing kind, and I think this actually inspired us to again have this now based on established research that our colleagues and which data you would see. So just to set, why are we talking about gender and transport in the Australian and the Asian region, especially at this time? So we all here heard about the Sustainable Development Goals. No, we always talk about the gender equality and of course the sustainable cities. I think it's very important that we forward this data from the World Economic Forum, 2020, that women make up 70% of all the social services staff globally. Domestic, sexual, and gender-based violence increases during crisis, transport not an exception. And women also account for the majority of the women's older population. And the reality is that women earn just 79 cents for every dollar men make. And if you go to our country, you can see these are the photos I took on the ground during this time. So with apologies, this is most Metro Manila because I wanted to bring in what we're seeing. And my colleagues here also saw this and they shared that it's the same issues that they're encountering. So as you can see, this is the status of our urban space, no, with regards to the cycling, the walking. And yes, there's always what you call mag-ingat sa pagbibisikleta. Be careful when you bike. That's actually a warning sign in one of the LGUs here. And then every time I walk, I would see this barrier and then a note on when. But I think when we hope that with this webinar, at the end of this webinar, everyone will feel that there's hope because life will be a walk in the park because women are doing their share. So with that, I thank you and hope that you enjoy this session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel, for setting the tone. And it's really perfect because you're later on, our input speaker will have something on that. So without much ado, you know, we have two amazing ladies who will be talking, will have inputs, you know, like our resource speakers. Unfortunately, they're only given 10 minutes to talk about diverse topics, right? Or just as a trivia, somebody noted that the panel right now is 18 women to 6 men. So we need to increase the ratio though. Okay. So our first input speaker, I will have to introduce them all together so that they'll just come one after the other, right? So our first input speaker is Dr. Eden Soropia. She holds a Bachelor of Science Architecture and MA in Urban and Regional Planning from the University of the Philippines and a PhD in Transport Planning from the from the University of Melbourne, Australia. She has significant experience in architecture and planning, residential, community, urban, and transport since 1996. She has worked in senior positions in academia, construction, and consulting companies in Philippines, Australia, and Qatar. She's a licensed Philippine licensed architect, and together with other various professionals, has successfully achieved project goals, which has taught her the values of teamwork, professional respect, networking, communication, and leadership. She is an advocate of sustainable solutions when planning for the built environment. Her topic will be on walking environment. Now, for our second speaker we'll talk about cycling environment, the diva of cycling. Our inspiration as far as cycling is concerned is Professor Rosel Rivera. She has been teaching in UP Diliman for over two decades. She is a researcher and teacher by profession, a sociologist by academic training, and a feminist by heart. For the past decade, she has been involved in research and advocacy for support systems for working women and consumer rights advocacy against violence of women, and has been involved in education and organizing work among women workers, peasants, and peasant mothers, urban poor, and police women. She's an avid advocate of sustainable transport and cities. Professor Rivera is active with organizations pushing for the preservation of sound cultural traditions and in creating spaces to hear the voices of women leaders in the marginalized communities who have been silenced. Her current preoccupation are handling skills courses in feminist research, women, gender, and technology, women and gender and environment, and working to build organizations for social transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me uh, welcome our input speakers, starting with Dr. Surupia. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Good afternoon, everyone. So, the walking environment. The environment where women walk is contingent on the community they live in, mainly because the interpretation of the design standards and guidelines of the walking infrastructure are developer dependent and or on the regulations of the local government. Women also walk where their personal security is assured, and there is a culture of walking. No? So case in point would be in the Middle East, where women are not encouraged to walk even when the infrastructure are all well in place. The impact of the pandemic on mobility is greatly felt because the first few months favored the use of private transport. It is only during the GCQ, or the general community quarantine, that public transport was made available. So if one does not own a car or does not even drive, the only mode available is active transport, which is walking or cycling. Walking. So Littman identifies walking as the most safe and most affordable mode during the pandemic. So if we have to walk, what is 400 meters around you? 400 meters because it is assumed to be a comfortable distance to walk and only takes 5 minutes of our time. The list identifies the essential businesses open from the start of community quarantine way back in March. Oh, this is the Philippine scenario. It includes hospitals and clinics, banks, drugstores, and supermarkets. So these would be our usual destinations as we try to maintain a semblance of normalcy. The quality of access to these essential businesses has been argued to be greatly dependent on the type of community one lives in. It is contended that women living in mixed-use communities would be walking more and therefore are affected by the quality of the walking environment. Well, it is assumed that if you're living in a predominantly residential development, then it's too far to walk to get to the various essential services. So here we see that the exclusivity of the streets makes it difficult to walk to access the essential services. Even with this shop that's like almost within 400 meters from this residence, getting to this one would be very circuitous, as one would actually utilize going outside and accessing. This shop would actually be nearer compared to this one. If we compare it to mixed-use communities, as in this example, the land use and the street layout allows for access to supermarkets and medical facilities within the 400 meters. So the question now is the quality of the walking environment. Most often, our planners or we planners forget that our streets are actually should be designed first and foremost for pedestrians and then private vehicles last. No? And here we see the standards for sidewalk design, and it shows that whether the community being developed is economic, socialized, or open market, um, the sidewalk width ranges from zero point 0.5 to 1.2 meters, all dependent on the width of the right of way. So we forget that the sidewalk is composed of three zones. So there should be a frontage zone, there should be a furnishing zone. What we are always stuck with would be the 1.2 meter minimum for the pedestrian through zone. But really, no, if you take everything together, it would be a wider space and more comfortable walking environment. So our reality is that even with the 1.2 meter pedestrian through zone, we have an obstacle course. See, making it difficult for women with bags, packages, carts, and children to safely maneuver around. So narrow streets also make it difficult to social distance. The quality of travel spaces is also critical because it influences our movement. So here we see this lady in the left. She may have come from a grocery run with her cart, and she's forced down to go down to the carriageway because it is more convenient to do so, even though it is not safe. Now, the choice of cobblestones and these pavers, porous pavers, really no, are a pain to walk on for women, given the types of shoes that we do wear. So we once had a client discouraging us to specify such, mainly because the heels of the female bosses sink into these holes and ruin their shoes. No, it's not just about vanity, but it is more about, it also includes the safety of the women. So it is one thing to walk when the weather is good. It is also another when it is raining. So travel surfaces can become dangerous, especially when we are wearing the wrong footwear. All right. And of course, once we open our umbrellas, narrow sidewalks, none. No, it becomes a hassle. So, but there are also instances where developers understand and consider pedestrian volume and the comfort of the and their comfort, no, in the communities that they do create. So here we see that the expansion of the walking environment from a previously below 1.2 meters through, now we have a 4-meter walkway, and here we also see that this is the before space available for pedestrians, and now we have a wider one. So really, no, the more expansive sidewalk can now accommodate more people. We can socially distance as well as, in this example here, accommodate the queuing spillover for the MRT station. So pedestrian barriers, they're okay. I mean, they're good. They ensure our safety, but they can also compromise a woman's personal security as it turns into a trap, no, or a cage during emergencies and especially at night. So can you imagine scaling these barriers will be really difficult for women. The threat to personal security is most palpable at night. So here we see, it's great to observe that white light provides a better walking environment than yellow light, for it provides greater visibility. Walking to access services also includes the possibility of crossing at signalized intersections. So it is argued here that crossing times should utilize those for the mobility impaired, which is 3 to 6 seconds more, no, than the normal, to allow for women with baggage and children to safely cross. At unsignalized intersections, reducing the curb radius makes it for a safe and shorter crossing. So really, because it slows down turning vehicles and improves the visibility of the pedestrians to drivers, who we hope would stop and allow pedestrians to cross first. The installation of overpasses and underpasses should be used sparingly and as a last resort. Again, as with the sidewalk barriers earlier, these ensure the safe crossing of pedestrians, but can compromise the personal security of women, especially at night. Furthermore, this image points out the inconvenience of overpasses. Providing for a walk face at a signalized intersection makes for a better option and the walking experience. Way forward, it is important to know where women walk and ensure that these spaces are designed to consider their movement. No? It should be understood that women are concerned with personal security. So remember, good lighting and knowing where to exit during emergencies are critical. A complete network at grade with good spatial quality, such as wide sidewalks, suitable travel surfaces in consideration of the weather and footwear, all make for a good walking environment, which improves our safety and supports our mobility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eden. That was a very compact 8 minutes. We
Thank
now
you.
call on Professor Dazzle, please, for her presentation. Thank you. On cycling environment. Dr. Dazzle, I think you're muted. Professor.
Okay. Um, the title of my presentation is Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for, I'm so happy to be here and honored to share my experiences and the stories of the women I have worked with and also exchanged with. You know. The title of my presentation is Women's Uptake of Cycling, a Positive Side Effect of the Pandemic. So I put it in quotation mark because some might take this negatively, because the pandemic is nothing is seen as positive there, but I just want to look at it in the context of uh, increased cycling by women during the pandemic. So please take that as the context. Okay, there's a picture of me 30 years ago. Okay, so my presentation would be in terms of three parts. One on the policy change versus cultural change and visible women. The impact of culture on the uptake of cycling. Second would be in terms of what are the issues on which are glaring in the cycling environment. And third would be what today's mainstream frame versus the transport options for the women and vulnerable populations. Okay. So the real world in the Philippines during the pandemic, you had this is people say that it's more organized now. People have distance, and there's somebody watching that people are following the protocols for in waiting in public transport stations now. But this looks like a very orderly place, but for women, this is very difficult situation. So this is the real world, which in many parts of the Philippines, no? And we have 2 seasons here, and during typhoon season, this is also another reality in which is not only dangerous, no, because you don't know if there's a hole right there, no. So just to give you a visual picture of the cycling environment. So now you'll see that there are bicycle lanes in places that you never imagined, no. This one is a nice lane because it's near a techno hub near our university, no. But farther off, you'll see that that's another situation. But this is also a nice picture, which is not usual, but I'd like to show it to you anyway. just to show that this is near Techno Hub, near the University of the Philippines. And who would ever imagine the possibility of better routes for cyclists via EDSA? So now during the pandemic, different groups worked with the MMDA in doing a survey of usage, and there was data to show the usage of the main thoroughfare of EDSA. So who would ever imagine the possibility of better routes for cyclists via EDSA? So now they're trying to connect different routes, from different cities. Okay, so much evidence abound globally about how women are multiple burdened with work in the caring economy. The belief that women are expected to take the lead role in the nurturing families and the next generation, more often than not, has pressured women to find ways to get to where they need to go to fulfill these expectations. The uptake of cycling as a fallback option transport pushed many to this mode of transport. There were no or little options to choose from with the shutdown of public transportation in the early days of the pandemic. We have listened to many stories of the no choice but to get to the workplaces as health workers and frontliners workers, newbies of weight riding. We call it weight riding because it's more than weightlifting. So it's not only the weight of 25 to 30 kilos of work-related goods or needs of the families, but also the obstacles for bad roads, and also it's not flat, no? So these are what we call, cyclists call weight riding. And even more daring than weightlifting or balancing 25 to 30 kilos of weight of food on their bicycle, shopping for food. The following are quotes from stories called From Pinay Bike Commuter Flow about the uptake of cycling by women in the cities. I switched to bike commuting because it's more efficient than taking public transportation. Ang dating biyahe ko, my former route used to go to work for 1.5 to 2 hours with 3 transfers for 25 to 35 minutes by bike. It's empowering and liberating. You're the one in control of your time. I hope many people will give bike commuting a try. A second is a 49-year-old. A bike was the perfect solution for going to the grocery and running errands. It doesn't require gas. It allows you to social distance, and it's uncomplicated. Just pedal and you get to the market or wherever you need to be. Another named Nerika, no excuses. At first, it took me 1.5 hours to bike from Makati to Ortigas, but as time went on, I was able to get to work in just 30 minutes. From then on, I would leave my house at 8 a.m., arrive 30 minutes before the clock, wash my face and clean myself in a wet hand towel, and dress like I mean business. When word spread around the office about someone who biked to work, they never guessed it was their fair-skinned accountant in corporate attire. Traffic, smoke, heat, sweat, dark skin, no excuses. Okay, this is the last one by Beth. I never learned how to cycle not until the ECQ happened last March. There were no public transportation, and add to it the restrictions and checkpoints everywhere. Cebu was transformed into a ghost town. I have to walk several kilometers just to buy groceries. I have no problem with walking as I love to hike, but the walk under the scorching heat of summer with bags of groceries to carry with was really burdensome. Hence, the decision to learn cycling became my short-term goal. I can confidently say the visibility of intelligent women in the public sphere is key part of the equation of the uptake of cycling. By visibility, I refer to such areas as influencing the discourse on transport, including the visibility and courage of women leaders in the transport movement. This is an insight applicable in the cities of Metro Manila and Baguio City in the Visayas like Cebu, and in Mindanao, Davao City. This is apart from competent professionals in the transport arenas, such as those who have placed active mobility agenda more seriously and only recently. Of course, that's a big for Doc Sheila, no, when she was at the helm of the National Center for Transportation Studies. There are collectives with women at the helm, such as Cycle for Life, Like Cycles Philippines, Kalyatista, Pinay Bike Commuters, Tropang Women Bikers, Vale Rides, Parfa Brigade, among others. Their leadership has pushed the agenda of cycling as transport not only more seriously, but likewise more creatively and more consistency. I have witnessed another arena where women are visible are as entrepreneurs, sellers of recycled bicycles, which have flourished during the pandemic. I've interacted with women who ran their enterprises with unstoppable spunk. I marvel at how these women are to lead mechanics to make sure that the bicycles are refurbished with safety of the user as foremost in mind. Next would be the concerns expressed by women using active mobility options. So I focus here on this is a group of visible women now in the pandemic on doing transport work. But what are some of the urgent, serious concerns which are so ordinary, but for women, we don't want them to be ordinary. Okay, one is driver aggression. No, the cycling environment, you have driver aggression, and we have a lot of women. Let me just share a few stories. No, mahirap sa kalsada. It's difficult in the road because there are riders and drivers who honk their horn as if and drive very fast, and you have to cycle very carefully. The second is from Darren, a 33-year-old. I started biking the city only last June when we resumed reporting to the office. At first, I was really afraid because I never tried biking in urban areas. It's an amazing feeling, though, when you conquer your fear and be able to do what you once thought you couldn't. Getting over my fear of biking in the city, especially during this pandemic, has truly given me a great sense of fulfillment. Although our company provides shuttle service, I decided to bike commute for various reasons. Apart from getting pumped up before work, it saves me time and money. I also get to enjoy every ride, exploring new routes, and getting a glimpse of nature have made every travel exciting. I can bike early to catch the sunrise or wait until the sun sets. Okay. Another urgent concern, which is passed as ordinary, is catcalling and sexual harassment. So Kathleen Alana, ingat po kayo tayo. Be careful in this road. He was mentioning a road. While I was biking with my friend, there was somebody on motorcycle, a man who pinched me in my breasts. I was so shocked that I didn't get the plate number. It was also getting dark, and I really rushed home because I was very scared. And then another one says here, I experienced last Monday, a man says, "Hi, miss, good evening. I love you." And he followed me, and I cut short my route and delayed his nagmamaneobra van. Oh, he was in a van. Okay. I left already right away. I really got high blood for this very rude men. So we should all take care. Okay. So once in the Pinay bike commuter site, women are able to share their stories without the fear of being judged, no, which you usually have in mixed sites. Okay. So as a feminist, I come forward to break the culture of silence, the silence which shrouds driver aggression, catcalling, and sexual harassment. These concerns are serious, and women are working towards to address them very seriously. Okay, so the problem is victim blaming. So this is one example of victim blaming. You're already the victim and you're also still being the one blamed. Okay, I hope the men in our audience will be our gender champions to say that this is not part of a human society. Okay, catcalling is already prohibited by law. Ladies, if you think catcalling is still rampant, then maybe you did not do your part. There's no case if there's no complaint. You better do some action than just blabbing. So this kind of attitude I'm putting it here that we need to change this. No, this has been going on for thousands of years, but we need to start somewhere. Here in this network of women in transport leadership. Now we look forward to our partners with men and also our sisters and also those from different identities. So I'd like to share with you on December 2, we have what we call the different women leaders Bantay Bike Toss, no, to address catcalling and sexual harassment. No, this is for women only. So I want to share this with you. And registration is required because we're in the stage of sharing stories about our own experiences and building communities. No? And next, there are also some initiatives in advocacy and building communities. So this one, they held this already last year. I hope you'll see this on November, anytime, no, about sharing the road. So I hope you can see this, sharing the road with her in the Pinay Bike commuter site. Okay, lastly, how is the current planning paradigm affecting the mobility of women to vulnerable users? Where are the people? Where are the women in the picture? The vulnerable populations of the elderly, children, the differently abled, the marginalized communities of diverse gender identities. If there are spaces for participation, are women and the vulnerable populations urged to claim this space? Is there a constituency of women and vulnerable populations represented in spaces for decision-making in the current planning paradigm? Does the current planning paradigm contribute to the redistribution of privileges which private car owners now have to the simple, ordinary transport commuter, half of this group women who need to trek into the public space to earn income for their families to survive or get to places in support of caring tasks in the private sphere? These are important questions we have been asking for 2 decades now. Fast forward 20 years after, responding to questions put forward by the Women in Transport leadership for this session, reflecting our more than 2 decades experience on cycling as sustainable transport advocacy, helps to understand forces which can push the agenda to move in the direction of the progressive agenda. You can have all the beautiful policies on paper, but it can never be enough. Policy change is very different from cultural change. Movers of ideas always reiterate that it's not enough to want the change. We have to see it, feel it, smell it, and taste it. Active mobility is not something women are doing only to cope with the pandemic. We now ask, is cycling something women will be doing for the long term? The stories the women tell give a resounding yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is the artwork of, to end my presentation, this is the artwork of Cathy Santa Ana, a car-free city. In 2008, it's now ongoing. It's now ongoing in Baguio Convention Center up to December 12. In 2020, she reworked Baguio City using leaves and moss per Baguio. The work illustrates Howard's plan of city nodes separated by green belts, where nodes are bicycling distance from each other. Salamat.
Thank you very much, Professor Rivera, for giving voices to women, telling their stories, and we hope we can advance those. So thank you for both our input speakers. We now move to our panel discussion. We will have three fantastic ladies who will talk about their countries' experiences as far as current active transportation opportunities during the COVID-19 pandemic and women's mobility challenges and opportunities as mobility shifts to active transport. We will be joined by Dr. Pawini Imchakol, a Thai national who is currently working as a lecturer at the Department of Urban Environment Planning and Development, Faculty of Architecture and Planning, Thammasat University of Thailand. She's also the director of the Center of Excellence in Urban Mobility Research and Innovation. Also joining us, sorry ladies, I'll have to cut short my introduction, so I will save on time. Also joining us in the panel is Dr. Annabelle Abuzo, my former student, a civil engineer and a faculty of the Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan College of Engineering. She's a full-time associate professor and is currently the director of the Engineering Resource Center of XU. Also joining us from Malaysia, the brand new aunt, is Dr. Engineer Masria Mustafa. She's currently the associate professor at the University Teknologi Mara. Okay, not the University of Malaysia. Her main areas of expertise are traffic simulation, modeling, traffic operation and control, driver behavior, intelligent transport, and advancement of women in transport leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome these amazing ladies for the panel discussion. Pawini?
Thank you very much, Sheila, for your introduction. And thank you for having me here today. And I would like to share our experiences in Thailand as a country case for you guys. And today, when we talk about the active transportation during COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of questions come to our mind that it is a kind of the low-cost solution. We already aware about the beneficial to our health and also the environment. However, when we have seen the situation in all over the world, we have seen the new kind of the active of transportation that have a variety of mode choices, ranging from skating, scooter, cycling, and some about wheelchairs. It seems like more bicycling have been produced per day. However, the share of the mobility in this active transportation is not there yet, even it is quite good in terms of tackling about the SDG or Sustainable Development Goal in target. However, when we talk about our country, for a case of Thailand, when we talk about walking and cycling, the PT situation is about we are at the lower than the average level. When we going to see from the smartphone data, we have seen that we are almost 1/3 of the statistical that we are in about lower than the average. Averagely, people may need to walk about 4 kilometers per day. However, we are below than that. And when considering for the cycling, we are about in the very good trend, the tendency of the 5 to 10 times greater than before. However, we are about the vulnerable road users. We still have this group of people got killed on streets, and it is quite sad situation that even the people who want to walk to save the clean air, to be present for the environment, they need to be killed, particularly on the teenager and also for the young group as our new generation. And we would like to present you to see the situation of Thailand, more focusing as a case study of my project. We got the supported from the grant of Faculty of Architecture and Planning, Thammasat University, to study about a study on influencing factors of healthy neighborhood development in suburban context of Thailand. We distribute the questionnaire sheet into the small grid of the province that show you in the middle map of Pathum Thani, and we conducted about the 1,000 set of samplings to see how differentiate between genders, male and female. We have seen that our target group have about the average income ranging about 5 to 600 US dollar per month, and they living in this city more than 5 years in the major group with a single status. We thought that this group should be probably active and also seem to be enjoy to for the active transportation. However, it's not. Even they are a bit in terms of the average to low income, they prefer to utilize their auto dependence like car or motorbike rather than active transportation, both male and female. And it seemed like when we do the spatial analysis, it seemed like it's scattering all over the city. We could not see the city boundary. It seemed like they need to ride the motorcycle all over the province. This is about to travel in the longer mile with unsafe situation. And we can see that about they're aware in terms of the environment like pollution, toxics, PM 2.5, and with the chronic diseases, seem like more auto-dependent, resulted to the more chronic diseases to the both male and female scattering all over the province. And also they need to face with the urban environmental problem. And also the concern is going to about the connectivity and the parking, both male and female. You can see that when we want to promote more healthy mode or more active transportation to the city, most of the time we more about to overlook for the proper infrastructure to compare between the traditional mode choices that they have been already familiar and also got comfort, got convenience from the private transportation. If we want to compete and we want to ask them to shift the situation and behavior, it means that we need to improve all of the dimension because we are about lower than the average one. And this is represent for both male and female. And it seems like with auto-dependent, the more integration between the infrastructure, utility, the conceptual of the design and planning need to be more integrated in terms of the facilitation for the mode changing in terms of the variety choices. As in the very beginning, I already showed you that we are beyond the cycling and walking. We are more about active like skaters, skate or scooter or skateboard. It seems like how we can think about more connectivity and how we can provide the real choices in the comparatively better than the current one that they already pick. How to make it more safe, comfortable, and also equitable. Safe is not mean only in the mode, but it's safe in terms of the connectivity, safe during daytime, and it need to be considered for the nighttime. And comfort, it means that whenever they need to circulate all over the city, how about the environment, clean air, drainage, and more exclusive lanes to facilitate this group of people. All age should be able to have safe, free, active transportation. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much for the sharing opportunity.
Thank you very much, Bawini, for showing us a situation in Thailand. We may now go to Annabelle, please. Bawini, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Annabelle, please share your screen.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My presentation today is entitled The Invisible Women, Active Transportation and Women's Well-Being During COVID-19, representing the Philippines. Yours truly, I'm Dr. Annabelle Abuso. Allow me first to relate gender equality, inequality, well-being, and mobility. In economic perspective, the Philippines had been consistently ranked as one of the top 10 country in terms of gender equality, both in the global and Asia Pacific region. However, the UN report in 2019 showed that gender inequality index of the country has an inequality that is in par with our neighbors, where prominently violence against women is experienced within the household. How does this relate with women's well-being? Well-being is defined as a state of being comfortable, healthy, and happy, or the experience of health, happiness, and prosperity, which is based on emotional, physical, social, workplace, and societal engagements of women. Before COVID-19, the well-being of women is defined by her baskets of roles. That includes being a daughter, sister, wife, mother, and a family member. But these roles are compromised with women's issues that includes discrimination, violence, harassments, and inequality. The UN revealed that gender parity exists in the household where women's capacity and decision-making is limited. Moreover, the average income between household or genders are not equal. Thus, when poverty risk is considered, both spouse needs to work. Human Development reports and argues that reduced gender discrimination in society will ultimately increase the GDP per capita and the economic development of the country. What is the landscape of women's mobility pre-COVID-19? An analytical study and assessment of mode choice between gender and mobility was established last year by Tabuada and Mayo. The study revealed that both gender agree on safety, comfort, and availability, safety, cost, and availability in choosing mobility modes. Yet, in contrast, women value comfort while men value environment, particularly in routes. In terms of modes, higher preference for private, for hire and taxi are related to safety and flexibility, while alternatives such as jeepney, motorcycle, taxi, and buses are related to cost and availability. This year, the WITL initiated gender and mobility study among university students. The interim results revealed that before COVID-19, 68% use public transport, and the male gender dominate in terms of frequency usage compared to women and LGBTQ. Across gender, the reasons for not using public transport include safety, service, and travel time, while for active transport, this is related to trip distance and the active transport facility. During COVID-19, the government mandated quarantine settings, namely ECQ or General Community Quarantine, ECQ, Enhanced Community Quarantine, and MCQ, Modified Community Quarantine. Thus, the community adhered to various safety and health-related recommendations or protocols. Likewise, the mobility of the general community is delimited with community physical and social distancing, public transportation protocols, and the DOTR policies on transportation access and pandemic-related controls. What is the landscape of women's well-being and mobility during COVID-19? Women's role of the household from the women's basket expanded as caregivers, teachers, workers, and displaced individuals in terms of calamity, conflict, and disaster. However, the UN still reports that women are underrepresented, even as women serve as pandemic frontliners. The violence in the household increased with the lockdown, and the women's well-beings are increasingly at risk. WITL interim report this November revealed that across gender, 84% of mobility change, 44% decrease in public transport were due to government and community-related regulations and policies, while 27% increase in active transport by cycling and walking is being considered because 96% agree that health consideration is the main factor of mobility shift. During COVID-19, mobility shift of women includes because of the household dynamics, women being advised to stay and work from home, women shifted or shared with mobility because of limited and expensive public transportation, and the women's mobility at home is narrowed to more relevant and practical trips. And for short trips, the errands of women are shifted to active modes. During pandemic, as general community public mobility changed and with government's protocol and regulation on public and private transportation, many have shifted to walking and cycling. The already advanced the Department Order 88 on the design of bicycle facilities in the national highways, and the President proclaimed 1052 on National Bicycle Day supports active transport mobility. During these pandemic times and possibly post-pandemic scenarios of things, I'd like to end with a critical scrutiny in active transportation challenges and opportunity, namely related to policy on pedestrian safety and security, for active transportation program related to pedestrian well-being and safety, particularly on children, elderly, PWD, and women's mobility, and the choice for alternative transport. Active transport projects can also be inclusive for or enhanced to smart mobility using IEC, ICT, and the Internet of Things. Active transport facility and infrastructure to be the main focus now, especially for women. Access and the connectivity of public transportation with active transportation. And the last but not the least, sustainable active transport mobility on tourism, mobility, and inclusive mobility of children, gender, PWD, and elderly, and resilient application when it's not just related to pandemic, but disaster hazard as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Annabelle, for keeping within time and for showing us a very comprehensive look at women's mobility pre-COVID and post-COVID. Let me just, before I call Mas, I know she wants to talk already, but let me just remind the audience to please write down their questions in the Q&A. Please do not worry about the certificates. I will make an announcement at the end of it. We would rather that you have questions about the topic that we have been discussing, because I saw all the questions about the certificates. We'll sort it out later. We would really like to engage you in the conversation. Mas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. All right, so can everyone see clearly?
Yes, just
right,
put it on presentation mode.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
So basically, I'm Masria from University of Technology Mara. So I will be talking about the active transport and women's well-being Malaysian perspective. So the agenda for today, since I'm been given only 5 minutes, so I need to kind of like talk fast. So I'll cover the overview of the mode share transport policy, mobility situation, and also women's safety in active transport. So this slide shows the mode share around the world, and in cities such as Melbourne, Sydney and Tokyo, walking and cycling are important non-motorized method of travel. Bus and tram mode of transport are still important to Hong Kong and London. The use of metro of rail-based public transportation is particularly significant in cities like Madrid, New York, Osaka, Seoul, Singapore, and Taipei. Cycling and walking mode is also significantly high in this country. Malaysia is keeping up with this. So this particular information is from UITP. When we talk about implementation of first mile and also last mile connectivity, FLM, it will determine the success of any public transportation system. And FLM is always considered as the first impression of a public transportation service quality. So basically, based on Nielsen's global survey of automotive demand in 2004, Malaysia is ranking third, 90% globally as the highest private car ownership, and is very alarming. 54% of Malaysian households have more than one car. So therefore, in order to encourage private transport drivers to be commuters, the other mode must be relatively cost-convenient choice to travel from point A to point B in a timely manner. So basically, this particular slide shows the options for FLM in Malaysia. We do have bicycle and walking as one of the options for first and last mile connectivity. In Malaysia, we have this national transport policy from 2019 to 2030. So I would like to emphasize there are 6 objectives. However, I would like to emphasize on the objective number 4 and also number 6, which is something related to the increasing of modal share for public transport, as well as to ensure efficient and also sustainable use of resources and minimize environmental pollution. So this particular policy can be downloaded from our Prime Minister's office. And in this particular national transport policy, there are 5 trusts and also 23 strategies. So I would like to emphasize on trust 2, which is something to do with optimizing, building and maintaining transportation infrastructure, services and network to maximize efficiency, as well as trust 4, progressing towards a green transportation ecosystem. So basically, in this particular NTP, it is not directly emphasized on the strategies towards having or supporting the active transport. However, it is indirectly emphasized on this strategy. Why? Because there are quite a number of cities in Malaysia already introduced low carbon mobility. For example, Kuala Lumpur Low Carbon Society Blueprint 2030, which is also complemented by these two particular other blueprint. For example, Kuala Lumpur Smart City Master Plan 2021 to 2025, and also Kuala Lumpur Climate Action Plan 2050. And there is also Low Carbon Society Development for Iskandar Malaysia. This one is in southern area of Malaysia, and also Shah Alam Low Carbon 2030 Action Plan. So basically, we know that bicycle and also e-scooters offer low carbon mobility solutions and sustainable alternative for first and also last mile commute in the cities, in addition to providing savings to local authorities in terms of infrastructure maintenance. So basically, they offer a way for the people to travel within the cities or short distances, such as from the train station or to the office. We have this based on Kuala Lumpur Spectrum Plan 2040 by Kuala Lumpur City Hall DBKL. The shared mobility refers to shared public transportation system such as PT, public transport, ride sharing, bike sharing, and also scooter sharing. So basically from 2017, we emphasize on the 20% of shared mobility, and then 2030 would be 60%, and also 2040 would be 70% of shared mobility. And in Malaysia, also in Kuala Lumpur, basically, we also have this non-motorized transport master plan. So Kuala Lumpur City Hall already prepared this particular master plan. They call it as Kuala Lumpur Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan 2019 to 2028 to encourage city dwellers to walk or to ride a bicycle. Currently in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur itself, we have more than 5.5 kilometer dedicated bicycle lane. And other cities in Malaysia also go in the same direction to improve their bicycle and also pedestrian infrastructure. This is a study by Hidayati 2020 talking about the gender differences towards the transportation mobility choices. So throughout these different socio-cultural construct, gender differences appear to affect transport mobility choices in part through the perception of safety. So in varying levels and also forms. So you may see in the figure there, from a transport perspective, women tend to have lower perception of safety, which influence their transport choices in terms of route, travel time, and also the mode. From the gender perspective, the transport system and also the built environment induce and also reduce the perception of safety, which related to violence and also harassment, which affect also activities depending on the gender. This one also from Hidayati 2020, it says the reasons behind the self-reported perception of safety. The recurrent keywords that you can actually there, for example, the accident risk, the street activity, stereotypes of the area. So in this particular studies, the perceptions of safety is not significantly correlated with walkability potential. For example, the more walkable an area is more likely, respondents reported a non-negative perception of the safety. So this particular research indicate how the perceptions of safety are socio-culturally and spatially constructed to result in gendered transport mobility choices. And during the pandemic, we know that there are quite a number of mobility shifts that we have so far, not only in Malaysia, but also in the other countries in ASEAN and also in the world. So basically, people work from home and then they change to use more private vehicle. Active mobility is actually one of it. E-commerce and also the travel on purpose. these are some of the initiatives that been launched by our government in order to improve or to emphasize on the active transport. So this one is actually having these personal mobility devices that may play a role in helping and take more vehicles off the road. Okay, and then the other one, active mobility pilot project to kick off in Shah Alam, up to 200 bicycles. So this is actually early this year in city of Shah Alam, where our university is actually located. So this one is actually running so far. Projection for shared mobility users in 2040 to be 70% of shared mobility, and also private vehicle 30%. And then recently in October, Putrajaya just converted or just announced to have the or to convert the current motorcycle path into bicycle path. And then we also have a walking initiative. For example, earlier this year, Kuala Lumpur already announced to pedestrianize 10 routes by 2025. And currently we have 1.173 kilometer long pedestrian bridge complete with air condition and also surveillance camera. So basically we also have another initiative, for example, car free day, okay, in Shah Alam and also in Kuala Lumpur. And then I would like to emphasize here, safe transport mode for women can only mean better connectivity. So this one is actually from the UN. I would like to emphasize how can active mobility be attractive to women. So of course we talk about we should improve the safety. That's clearly a long way to go, but it is very important to keep taking steps in the right direction and also to use every option at our disposal. So these are from World Bank. How are we going to improve the how are we going to improve women's safety in active mobility mode? So basically there are 6 different options that we can actually do. For example, public awareness raising about women's mobility needs with respect for local cultures, to gender inclusive consultation we can actually do with our women's group. So lack of safety in public spaces affects women's human rights and also their ability to participate equally in the city. When women feel unsafe in public spaces, they are less likely to travel. So this hinders their access to education and also social services, for example, making them unable to take advantage of the existing economic and also social opportunities. Women will ultimately become the major beneficiaries of improved access to safe infrastructure for walking and cycling. With that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mas. I would like to thank all the ladies for it was a difficult task because you had 5 minutes and even 10 minutes to talk about all these things, right? So I'd like to thank you, and please give everybody a round of applause. All right, we need to make a tiny shift in our program because it's already 4:24. It's 69. So instead of getting the input speakers to comment on the presentations of the panel discussants, I would really like to just go to question and answer. If there's no
Approve.
if there is no violent objection from the panelists and the input speakers. Okay, let me start by. Okay, very quickly. I will assign, and then the rest can. But you have to have like 30 seconds only. Sorry. Okay. The first question here, and I think this is for you, Professor Rivera. You mentioned that Baguio was mentioned. Baguio was mentioned. What was that? Nawala. Baguio was mentioned. Sorry, it's not there anymore.
I answered it already.
Okay. Never mind. So, okay. So she answered it already. And her answer is. Okay, so let's not go there. The second question is, okay, this is very important, and anybody can answer it in the panel. Doc Daniel, you're also free to go, but only 30 seconds. How are women empowered in this time of pandemic? Very general question. Who wants to go first, please? All right, who's raising her hand? Eden, Dr. Eden, yeah? Okay, please go ahead.
Because that area where it was a mixed use community, that's where I live. So I have majority of the stuff I need would be around 400 meters from me. I think this pandemic taught me to actually buy a cart myself, so that when I do my grocery runs once a week, I'm able to carry it. I'm able to actually move around, and that has made everything simpler for me, and it's not heavy. I mean, anything heavy, no? So yeah, that one, now I can just go and buy lots of stuff, and then I can put in my cart, and then I get to go home. That's that.
All right. Anybody else? Like another 30 seconds. I have enough time for 30 seconds. The question is, how are women empowered in this time of pandemic? All right. If nothing else, there's another question. The second question is difficult, but so I'll just leave it. I'll put it because it's more general transport in the Philippines, right? So I'll get back to that later on. The question is, what examples of specific infrastructural changes can be made to make it safer, especially for women? So I'm going to have to ask everyone to answer this, but very shortly. Pawini, do you want to go ahead? Examples of specific infrastructural changes.
Yeah, I think the built environment play an key elements to attract people. To the first one, they need to decide to be more active, right? In the very beginning of the decision to make the transportation, even we have seen that there is a kind of track way or whatsoever the route have been designed. However, it could not guarantee for the security and also the safety. In this sense, not only the spaces with the attractiveness, but the innovative in terms of the like CCTV to enhance the security and also the way to manage to really taking care the security of the women. I think this is a must because women is not alone. Sometimes they come with the parents because they are the one who need to take care of the family, also the kids. I think this kind of the environment need to be properly designed to encourage the collective behavior of the mobility, particularly for promote the safe and security from the sexual harassment, violence, or whatsoever, to not to encourage them to enjoy the outdoor and active mobility. That's gonna be my recommendation.
So thanks, Pawini. So it's a CCTV, closed circuit TV for areas so that people will feel safer walking, not just the women, but even elderly. Who else? Who else? Raise your hand. Mas,
Okay.
go ahead, Mas. Okay, Mas, and then Daniel, and then Annabelle. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. The thing is, it's like what we had already discussed in the previous webinar, that we had something to do with technology. So we can actually have this improvement in terms of the apps. You know, we can actually have the apps downloaded just to make sure that we are safe. So basically, maybe that particular apps can be used in order to just to aware us. I mean, create awareness for us for the accident. I mean, not accident, but like harassment-prone area, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So apps, use of applications, and I think next would have to be Dr. Daniel, right? You raise your hand.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Annabelle, I will call you next. Thank you.
I think I just want to reiterate what one of our presenter, Dr. Eden, highlighted, no, the importance of light. No, I think lighting plays a big role, especially in the evening. No, and now I think with all the innovations, we can actually be renewable also by using perhaps LED light or solar panel. And the other one I think is wayfinding. No, I think we're also missing. No, it's difficult now when you don't know where to go, but yeah, if you want to be, you don't know where's the shortcut, you know, we don't have that really nice wayfinders or wayfinding structures or even maps, no. You don't need to look always on your on your mobile phone, but actually structure that you can easily find your way
physically, right?
In the urban.
Yeah, physically, you actually could see it without your mobile phone. Okay, so far it's CCTV, it's applications, it's lights, and wayfinding. And Annabelle? Annabelle, you're cute.
Okay. I'd like to highlight again the need for Internet of Things application, especially the digital platform in support of pedestrian safety and security for women. in particular because women are prone to some harassments and violence on the road while they are traveling. We certainly do not know yet if women will be very pro for cycling with respect to mobility shifting these times. But I know that some women are into walking, and for that, I'd like to highlight on infrastructures for pedestrians that will be related to walking should be connected to the immediate or access to public transportation or security aspect, which is related to police stations and whatnot, so that they will be more comfortable and more secure in their travel. And I'd like to also to highlight that mobility of the not only for women but also for children and the elderly.
All right, thank you. You know, there are still other questions. So for those of you who have not answered the question, I will give you a chance to answer the question. So Annabelle was saying that it's also connectivity to, you know, it's not just like putting up the facility with nowhere to go. All right. There's another question here that says, is there a study? Does anybody of you know a study on women with disabilities, the mobility of women with disabilities during the pandemic? Anybody? None?
None.
All right. So I think that's just unmute if you know, but if you don't, none. So that means as a research area that we should look into, right? Women with disabilities, their mobility is impaired even more so because of their disabilities, right? And so that's another
Can I just add on?
Yeah, go ahead.
I
didn't see you. Sorry.
I think it's not. I think it's not. Well, if you talk about Southeast Asia, maybe that particular research is not there yet. However, in Europe, for example, they talk about barrier-free research. So basically, there are quite a number of research that been conducted in Europe. For example, in Vienna, in TU Vienna, Technical University of Vienna, they do have this barrier-free research that also emphasize on people with disability and also women. So can check on that.
All right, thank you, Mas. Another question. The questions keep changing. I don't know. Some questions are disappear, and so this question is let me just check a question that's actually country specific. Oh, it's not here anymore. Okay. Does bosses in Thailand and Malaysia, so I guess it's for you, Mas and Balwini, have spaces for bikes? Who wants to go first? Balwini?
Yeah. For the spaces, actually, we as we have a discussion that we already prepare and provide the bike lane for the one who ride to bike to the city. However, the security and the safety is not there, and also the facility, for example, the parking, appropriate parking, because some like expensive bike, the biker who dare to park there, and also the facility like shower room, locker, and so on, it's not equipped in terms of the city planning. I think this kind of the promoting and also the incentive need to be integrated as a package between the city planning, business development, and also transportation as integration to promote and make it secure, safe, convenient, and comfort. I think this kind of the conceptual of the development must be placed for the active mobility in the city.
All right, thank you. So it's really more than bikes and on the buses, right? It's really the holistic planning. Mas, what about in Malaysia?
Yes, in Malaysia, for example, by our Rapid KL, they have the guideline for bringing bikes on board trains. So, for example, they do have this facility. Only foldable bikes are permitted, and cyclists under 12-year-old must be accompanied by adults. So there are quite a number of guidelines in order to kind of support the active mobility among Malaysians.
All right, thank you, Mas, and thank you, Pawini. Another question. Oh, I'm going to have to read this. Thank you for the presentations. Active transport somehow increased, especially during the early stage of the pandemic, where public transportation was not available. However, the shift to active transport may only be for a short period of time, because out of necessity. So the question is, what are the possible ways, initiatives to encourage long-term shift to active transport. How can women take part in these initiatives? Well, wait, ladies, I'm gonna have to call. Where's Professor Rivera? Dazzle, where are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Today I
for
was
the
already
Philippines.
answering.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
That was the last part of my presentation, because the fact that there are women leaders visible in these changes, no, that this is and the decisions that women have made to take up active transport, not only with facilities, but that they know what groups will support the decision, no, kasi it's also their vote for the environment, no, and it it helps you be healthier, no, so it's a decision you make to 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 shift, no, but like Dr. Dance was saying, it's just like smoking, for 30 years doctors have been uh, studying that, but it's not easy to change, but I think if the fact that there are visible leaders, women leaders like Sheila and Durley and Daniel, who are visible, who are able to provide information for women which needed, specific to their gender, and second, to connect them with groups which can support their choices.
All right. Thank you, thank you, Professor Rivera. Sorry, I keep on calling you Dazzle. Mas, you mentioned something about consultation in your presentation. Yeah, as part of your thrust too. Can you expound on that? How women can take part in the initiative? Mas, you're muted.
Okay.
You're cute. Okay.
The thing is, for consultation, that's why we need this group, kind of like the leaders group, like what Michelle Obama had ever mentioned. Success is not only about how much money you make, it's about the difference you make in people's life. I think this is one of our objectives in order to cope with everyone. We are going to highlight the importance of women leaders in order to create our own society. I mean, meaning that I'm not being biased to all the men, but the thing is, we are actually advocating among those ladies over there that we are here. I mean, we can actually make the changes, and we can actually have kind of like different giving them different perspective in terms of designing the transport for women.
Yeah. Thank you, Mas. It's all about building partnerships. It's not going to happen overnight. And if you notice in the presentations, I'm just going to answer it in general because I think I just have about 7 minutes for question and answer. But as you can see in the presentations that we have already, part of it is really looking at how we can encourage women to take part in this. Also have partnerships, right? Listening to voices, as Professor Rivera had mentioned. Okay, there's a question here, and I'm going to answer it because it's how important is mobility and transportation to women? How does this address gender issues? It's very important, and I think all the presentations have highlighted this because women have many roles, as Dr. Abuso had said. She has a basket. That's what Annabelle was saying. She has a basket of roles which has even become bigger so it is important. And the reason why we're here is because we'd like to surface gender issues. Those are to be addressed. Okay. Next, what are the stages? Yes, go ahead, Belle. Go ahead, Belle.
A while ago, we mentioned about PWD, but apparently there's an existing problem of mobility of women which are pregnant at these times of pandemic.
Pregnant
women,
yeah.
Who needs to
access
now.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Belle. That's one of the baskets of roles, right? Motherhood is also another important component. Okay, so,
Sheila.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a very good question here by Dina Dayao. Can maybe somebody from the other countries?
All right.
Share?
Today there was a bus crash.
No, the one below on the at-grade pedestrian crossings.
Okay. In which of the countries represented here are at-grade pedestrian crossings, not ugly and unsafe footbridges? are the standards? How do we persuade the Filipino policymakers to build at-grade crossings which are safer for everyone? I think so. The Filipinos are excluded from answering this. Okay, all Filipinos panelists, keep quiet. We're just have to answer. We're only gonna have to ask Pawini and Mas. The rest of us, let's keep quiet. Okay, who up? Mas, you go ahead.
Can I have again the question?
Okay. The question is, one of our problems here is because of pedestrian overpasses that are high. So her question is, in your country, what is the standard? Is it at-grade pedestrian or is it overpasses and underpasses? And Eden has already registered her distaste for both. Okay, in your countries, which are the standards? Mas, in your country, are you fond? Are you fond of overpass? I have everything. Okay.
We have everything because the thing is, what we have in Malaysia, increasing awareness about cycling is actually quite challenging because it is not our culture. Okay, unlike Singapore, in which they have already kind of like developed some guideline and also some very long bike or pedestrian pathway. So sometimes our people always talk about the weather. I mean, they have they normally go with a lot of excuses. For example, the weather, like raining and also very sunny, so that's why they do not want to cycle, they don't want to walk. So basically we have to kind of like take this challenge to go further. So that's why in one of my presentation slide, I'll show you one of the pedestrian pathway that complete with air condition and also CCTV surveillance. So I would say political will that is actually play a very important role in this. Yeah, they can make changes.
Thank you, Mas. Pawini, in Thailand?
Yeah, I just thinking right now the public policy need to be taking consideration for the public voice and opinion, the request from the all communities and the kind of public transportation, active mobility. I think it's a kind of the visible choices among all stakeholders. I think this kind of challenges is also beneficial for the political views as well. If they have done success, so it's kind of voice up around any communities, and it can be shared. Like right now, I think user like kind of Instagrammable social networks. I think it's right now is great challenge, and I think it's a kind of a must for negotiation to make something changes in our society by promoting more about public choice and also active mobilities.
Thank you, Pawini. So I guess the long and short of it is, even in Thailand and in Malaysia, we're still struggling because they have all of it. They've got at-grade, they've got overpasses. So it is, and I like what both said, that it is an area of negotiation. It's just important for us to be clear about the agenda for active transport. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it is an area for negotiation in improving transportation. Sorry, I only have one more time for one more question, and I pick the question on what are the common gender barriers that you can observe in the road system. So I'm going to have to pick one from the Philippines, and of course I have no choice. Malaysia, Mas for Malaysia, and for Pawini. Okay, Philippines, who wants to answer that? The question is, what are the common gender barriers that you observe in the current road system? Who wants to answer? Nobody answers? Eden, that was your presentation.
Yeah, but the thing is that when it comes to, our infrastructure, it's more, it doesn't just affect the women. It actually affects everyone. So that's why there is that focus on the level of infrastructure that is being provided. And again, we are dependent really on whoever is putting all of this infrastructure in place. So that's why the widths are really dependent on who allows this much space, etc. So I think what gender wise, no, I think it would be more about the continuity of our infrastructure. I think that is what is lacking. No? There are a lot of dead ends or high curbs that you cannot maneuver around. So I was telling you earlier, I actually bought a cart. So sometimes really, no, you have to go down to the carriageway to just be able to walk straight forward. No, so that's the I think that's how I see it. That's where the gender thing is more is palpable because I cannot carry the cart, and then of course if you've got overpasses, again the overpasses, and then the underpasses, it's very difficult to maneuver if the elevators are not working. That's why I'm not a fan of it. And as much as possible, if we can do move ad grade, then it should be ad grade.
We hear you, Dr. Zarupia. We hear you. We hear you. We hear you about upgrade. Okay. So I'm just gonna pick up on what she said that the road infrastructure is really not just about women. It's also about in general. It's designing for people, as what Eden had said earlier. Dr. Zarupia had said earlier. Mas, you want to go ahead? In the context of Malaysia, what are the infrastructure that affects gender?
I think we have to come back to the questions of should we plan our city according to gender? Should we actually take into consideration everything? It's not only gender, but also taking into consideration people with disability or the veteran people. People who are already 60 years old and above. So what we have in Malaysia. We try to kind of like, for example, public transportation. We do have the design only for women. For example, we have previously we had bus only for women only buses, because women will definitely feel safe when they are all in the same gender in the same bus. And also for our train, we do have women's coach only, which is quite successful so far. And also currently we have these ride-hailing services. So basically they are gender-based. People will definitely, or women would definitely feel better if they are driven or they are chauffeur driven by these women. So basically these are something. I mean, it cannot be for everything, but there are certain things that we have to design according to gender or some variables that we have to take into consideration.
Thank you, Mas. That's very profound. Whether it's just for gender or for everybody else. Thank you. Pawini, please go ahead.
Yes, I also like to support our speakers here that when we invest for the infrastructure, it's not just about for some like certain group of users, but we need to invest for all, invest for like inclusive design and planning. And active mobility is a low-cost solution actually for everyone. So even the poor or disabled, I think we should be designed for the welcoming space, and also we need to be sure that we are make it real happen for the welcoming space for all. I think that's going to be the kind of to reach the sustainable development. Most of the time we just talk, but we did not measure, not keep monitoring. If we keep monitoring, we're gonna make it visible. I think this is the key challenge, and we need to make it happen.
So the key word there is inclusivity. It's not just gender, it's inclusivity. And that's what we're gunning for. I'd like to thank all the panel members, our input speakers. Sorry, I don't have much time. I was really worried earlier because there were only a few questions. Now I cannot fill the questions anymore because we just have 11 minutes left on the clock before we're booted out from the room. And so thank you. Please help me thank our panel members, Dr. Eden, Dr. Mas, Dr. Pawini, Dr. Daniel, Dr. Annabelle, Professor Dazel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your expertise. And as we have said, the journey has just started. And this is not just about women, it's about people in general. So there were many questions about certificates, and I'm going to have to answer it. You will be given a certificate for each webinar that you will be attending. But you will have to, I will show now the evaluation. I think Sheila will also put it in the chat room, the evaluation link. So please fill that up because that is going to be the basis for the ACE certificate. All right. So I'm also going to flash it up here. But before I do so, I'd like to invite everybody for the second day tomorrow. I'm sure hopefully you were excited, you were titillated by the different stuff, the different things that we talked about. So tomorrow we have another of this one, which is on understanding women's mobility through data. Fortunately, tomorrow, at least we will have one male panel speaker. So it's not going to be all women tomorrow. So just to show you that we're not biased to women. All right. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. And now I'm going to flash the, I'm going to flash the link, but it's also for those of you who have QR, if you have QR, you can get the QR, or you can also just do the link. This is for part 1, evaluation. I'd like to encourage this is important. You cannot get your e-certificate if you do not get this. Okay, there were many questions also while you're looking at it. There were many questions about whether you get our presentation. Well, the standing agreement right now is we will have to ask permission from the speakers. But there will be a recording of this, and I don't know how we will share it, but there will be a recording of this presentation. Another one is those whose questions were not answered. We will put them together and we will try to answer them. All right. So, having said that, also, I'd like to thank all the 274 participants. We were supposed to be 488 from 20 countries, but I only see 274. Maybe the rest had problems with airline reservations. But, but with that, I'd also like to thank our partners, the National Center for Transportation Studies, the Transportation Science Society of the Philippines, the East Asian Society for Transportation Science, all the different universities. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. We hope to see you tomorrow. And please, everybody, keep safe. And remember, we are all in this together. Thank you.
She, wala nang closing remark.
No closing remarks because tomorrow is